And we are live with the audios and stuff.
With everything?
Yeah, man. What's up? How are you?
Love it. I'm good. How are you, Hava?
Do we need to get a jingle? Do you need to write a jingle?
What would our jingle... Maybe. What would our jingle...
That's so open-ended.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. Like, what?
I envision
what style would
something-
you envision a jingle being for us?
Say, I envision some kind of corny 80s sitcom level jingle.
Like, too many cooks? Too many cooks?
Yes.
No, all right. Something like that? I can get behind that now.
It's Happa and 7. Real talk.
And 7 times. Yeah, I can get behind. Maybe. That was the gauntlet. That's what that was. Anyone who's listening, paying attention, that was the gauntlet. That was Happa saying, "Hey, can you make a jingle?"
Oh, I know
That's
you
what
can.
That was.
I know you can.
That's
I'm well
exactly
aware.
what that was. So how are you doing today, bud?
I'm fantastic, dude. Well, besides trying not to melt, you know how that is.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Guy
freaking hot.
I work with came back today from Florida Keys. There's a 120-degree heat index there.
Oh my god.
He's from Ohio, so he was like, "I was 120 degrees in the Keys." I was like, wow, man, 120 is hot.
And you can keep it there.
Yeah, 120 is hot. Like, I'm an Alabama boy, and I will tell you, 120 is hot. You're a Texas
It's
boy.
so funny.
120 is hot.
It's so funny because you and I have had this conversation about like that line. Oh, it's a dry heat. You know.
Oh my god.
And-
yeah.
And I remember even when I was over in Iraq or in Arizona, it'd be 120 or whatever, and someone would inevitably make the comment, "But it's a dry heat." No. It's hot. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter hot or dry or wet. It's hot.
Yeah. When you pass, I think I told you the hardest I'd ever been in was 116, and you go in fearless because everyone's told you your whole. If you grew up here where I grew up, everyone's told they've said that your whole life. Oh, it's a dry heat. Don't worry about it, son. And
Right.
you're like, yeah, I'll march out in the desert. I'm good to go. Oh my god.
Seriously.
Like, dry heat is somehow worse, right? Like, I don't know. 116 is 116, and 116 is hot.
I think for me, it's like when it is dry, and you open the door, it takes your breath away, like the air's on fire, right? But when it's humid, it just is heavy, and oh man, yeah, the hell with that. Like I
one of the
remember
things
there's times stepping out of my freaking little hutch when I was there in Iraq, and you open the door, and it's like you almost took like one of those double breaths, like you hit your thumb with a hammer, or something.
Yeah.
kind of
You
thing.
stick your face out of a car window going 70, or is that just me? Like, it kind of takes your breath.
Forced
and
air.
There's things they can do in like a drier climate, I guess. Like if you're walking around
Right.
downtown Vegas, right? They'll have the misters. They'll have the misses.
yeah.
They have the missuses too, but they have the misters, right? With the little fans with the water, and it blows a little mist on you, and it immediately evaporates. So it's not like a big inconvenience for everyone there. If you did that in Alabama, it would just be boom, because it's not gonna
Yeah,
evaporate.
it's a
right?
shower.
There's nowhere for it to go. Yeah, so here it's just like good luck.
So I
Best of
mean, I
luck to you.
imagine like you just walk around just constantly just sweaty, just always
We
sweaty.
just don't go outside, right? You stay away from outside. So we had the World Games here, not too long ago, here in Birmingham, and I remember them interviewing this. I think they're from Denmark, right? This team, I think it was swimmers, and they're
Oh,
like, "What do you
God.
think about the World Games?" And they're like, "It's hot." It's like left. Like, these are world-class athletes, and they're like, and I was like, "Yeah, I feel you.
It's a whole different level of it, like climatize, right?
Yeah, they were not ready. So yeah, the world's getting hotter, Happa. But you're
Ugh.
getting cooler.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's getting cooler. We'll see. I
Yeah,
mean, the
we'll see.
difference last year's electric bill to this year's electric bill, I'm happy because I'm already saving $100 a month. So we'll hopefully get that down another maybe 50, 75 bucks come next month. So we'll see.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyway.
It's hopefully we can all stay cool this summer. Hopefully, if you want to check out our thoughts about the world being hotter than it's ever been, you can check out the previous podcast. If you're wondering where those are, get them wherever the hell you get podcasts. Honestly. So we got What Happened, like Spotify, right? We
Yep.
got all the places wherever you get podcasts, you can get this podcast. And the one from 2 weeks ago, which was episode 5, go check it out. If you want to know what we're thinking about, the world is hotter than it's ever been. Measurably, it's not arguable. It is hotter. And then, of course, a lot of people have opinions as to why, and we had a pretty fun conversation around.
Oh yeah,
thoughts on that. So worth checking out if anyone wants to go reference the back.
9 or 10 different streaming services now, something like that. So so we're getting there. And actually, that was going to be something I was going to end up since we do have a few people watching right now, and hopefully the folks that stream us, because we do have a pretty regular number that download us on a regular basis. I'm kind of curious because I was going to talk to you about maybe switching our hosting server to Spotify, because then what I can do is the video that people are watching right now, the live stream, I can download it, upload it up to Spotify, and it'll be on there just like all the big boys, on Spotify.
So you don't want me to have the very important job I have now, which is remixing and being audio only.
No. The audio would still be needed.
This is you making me, I'm not that useful as it is. You're taking away
I'm just amazed that I haven't screwed anything up yet.
I'm a whiskey disposal unit, and I can mix audio. Those are the only things I'm good at, and you're going to take one of them away. You know what that leaves me with? Whiskey disposal unit.
It might be a more enjoyable 7. You never know.
Yeah, this is on you. This is on you. I'm telling my wife this is on you. She'll come for you. You know that, right?
I'm scared of that woman. Not gonna lie.
I'm terrified of her.
I'm a baby.
Right.
I can't fight back. Right. I do one of these things.
So, Happa. We got things to talk about tonight. I'm going to run through really quick, tell everybody what our subjects are. That doesn't mean we will actually cover them. So we were talking earlier.
That's a good disclaimer. We should say that every time.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what we're going to talk about, and then we're not going to talk about it. That's how it's going to go. But I was saying, maybe at the beginning of the podcast, we should say, hey, here's kind of the stuff we want to run through. So I'll tell you what we planned on talking about. So we planned on talking about bioengineered meat. Believe it or not, it's a thing. We're going to have a conversation about it. We wanted to talk about the work ethic amongst younger people. So we're going to get our pitchforks and brooms and tell them to get off our lawns, and we're going to talk about younger generations and their work ethic. We wanted to talk about a really interesting story, I think, that came out, and we were talking about it just before the podcast. Do we want to cover it? But arresting Vladimir Putin, if you're another country, would that mean war, right? Because there was a whole story about that I'd love to cover. And of course, it wouldn't be a podcast if we weren't going to talk about Twitter. So Twitter has rebranded. Elon Musk is running number 2 in the media cycles this year, and he just can't have it. So he's got to be number 1 in the media cycle. So he's rebranded Twitter into just whatever random letter he decided to use. And then we'll do, what you're watching happen, what you hear in 7, and talk about what we're playing, right? So that should be a pretty good podcast. I think there's going to be some interesting stuff there, and I'm excited. Everyone should know that we don't talk about these things beforehand. We save the conversations for now. We try not to be political. We try not to be controversial. We're about spreading joy in the world, but that doesn't mean we won't have controversial opinions. Hap and I agree on very little, and then here and there we agree, but love each other the same and love to have the conversations, and that's how friendships are supposed to work, right?
I think it's a perfect example. You shouldn't always agree on everything, like with your friends. That's healthy, right? That's
people
normal.
that agree with me are boring.
He's being facetious. We typically agree on things.
We agree on a lot. Yeah, we do. We don't disagree a lot, but it's honestly, in conversation, you wouldn't know the difference. It's going to be a fun conversation whether we agree or disagree.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't change the feeling. So let's start with one that I'm not really sure how I feel about yet. Let's talk about bioengineered meat, Appa. This one was yours. So tell me your thoughts here.
So the FDA has approved lab-grown, it's vat-grown. It's not lab anymore because it's been approved, right? So now vat-grown chicken, and it makes it sound way worse, right?
It's awful, dude. Just the
vat-grown chicken to be served to humans, and there's going to be 2 restaurants in the very near future that are already saying they're going to be serving it. One's in LA and one's in Washington, D.C. Surprise, LA is going to be a place that we're going to have lab-grown chicken, vat-grown chicken, right? For those of you that don't know, the way this works is you literally get a slab of chicken that's never been attached to a chicken. It's literally an embryo, and then they put growth cells in there, and they grow. in my mind, what I see is a petri dish with the chicken breast like on it. And that's what I see in my head.
So Josh Tetrick, the guy that runs the company that made, what is the name of the damn company? Let me see. It's Josh Tetrick is his name. Uh, Eat Just. So Eat Just is the company he runs, and they operate something called Good Meat. So the thing that got approved is called Good Meat, and he's actually
like
from.
this.
So he's actually from Birmingham, right? He's from here, and so I was like, I'm gonna look in and see what's up, and I stumbled across some of the pictures of the vat grown meat, and it doesn't help, right? When you see these big blocks of chicken, and I was reading into it, and it's actually chicken, right?
Yeah.
Like at a cellular level, this is chicken,
Yeah.
but it was never a chicken.
Yeah.
And they apparently go and sample cells from the most desirable, best tasting cell lines of chicken. And they're like, okay, we're going to turn that into a vat of meat. Now, of course, obviously now it's prohibitively expensive. And you know, there's the side of it where people are saying, hey, look, agriculture and farming is one of the biggest, you know, impacts on the environment, and not just that, but if you're in California and you go through these water cycles, right, the agriculture industry is a big part of that. So there's a lot of reasons that humans would want to be like, we've overconsumed agriculture.
Sure.
How do we not do as much of that? So I get that, but if it's prohibitively expensive, it's just gonna be rich people eating like exotic meat. And I've played way too many video games and seen way too many movies where a whole planet like turns into this creeping meat. Right, like so, and then there's like all in my head. There's like a lifetime of ick associated with a chicken that ain't a chicken, right? Like, so the real question I have, and I was talking to my wife about this when I saw you put this on there. I was like, would you try it?
Would I try it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not
No.
gonna say what she said because the answer she said is not appropriate for television.
No.
But
No.
you would not even trust. So if someone said, "Hey,
Absolutely,
look,
positively not. Will not. I don't care if they give it away. Not.
just don't want to try it out." Have you ever tried the? And that's what we were talking about. Is I've not even eaten the Impossible Burgers and stuff. Maybe this is where I got old, right? Maybe this is where I'm old fashioned. Is like I have slaughtered animals before. I don't know if people, you know, that's something. You know, I don't want to go too much into detail there, but my dad thought it was important that I understand where my food came from. So I have a very, very healthy appreciation for like how you get meat. And I really, really, really don't like the way we do it in a lot of ways, right? We have over-farmed animals, and we do a lot of things that are really easy, honestly, in the name of, you know, getting more meat into the market. And so it's not all farms are that way, but I understand that, you know, why people are that way. I'm not. I'm still going to eat meat. I still appreciate it. But maybe this is where I got old, where it's like it's a block of meat, right? Maybe this is where I draw the line, and I'm like, I just got old at that point. I don't eat lab grown meat.
The issue
Maybe
that
my
I
kids
have
will.
with this whole thing is, and I don't know how much, if you've done a lot of research into it, but how things have changed on the agricultural side of the professional industries. Case in point, corn now, there isn't the corn that is mostly consumed in the United States is not realistically corn that was even 50 years ago corn.
Yep.
Right? It's all genetically engineered, it's all genetically altered, it's made to survive these pesticides that they spray on the corn to kill everything that would normally eat it. And there is actually a few lawsuits that have gone against the Monsanto companies and stuff like that spearheaded this technology, specifically because they noted that there was an increase in lymphoma and other diseases as soon as they started instituting this corn. And so they're starting to dig a little bit more into it. Now, me personally, I'm not a fan of any genetically engineered, altered foods, and I try my hardest to not consume any of that, which is very difficult here in the U.S. Europe, it's not so hard to get away with because they typically immediately when this stuff comes out, they ban it. You know, like high fructose corn syrup is banned in almost all of their products over there, stuff like that. So for me, I understand the food chain thought process, even though we're probably way removed from that science at this point. You know what I mean? But if I'm eating chicken, I am eating the chicken to get the nutrients from the chicken as a result of the nutrients that the chicken ate. So what the hell did this vat chicken eat? You see what I'm saying? This is
I do.
where my
So,
head goes.
well, so
like,
this is exactly where the conversation with my wife. She's like, well, I mean, the chicken ate feed. The feed came from here, right? You go all the way down the chain
Yeah,
to grass, which is actually the dumbest animal, right?
Right.
Because grass is like, I'm so dumb, all I can eat is sunshine, right? Like grass is really stupid.
or very intelligent. Anyway.
So you get all the way down that path, and maybe this is I don't know, right? This is going to be a really interesting to watch thing. Lab grown meat. It's here. It will be served. Some people are going to be eating it in North America. And the GMO thing that you're talking about is really interesting because you can run across foods that are non-GMO, and that's what they're talking about. It's not genetically altered.
Sure.
It's not genetically modified. That's the
Sure.
that's the thing when you see the sticker on the stuff. It's non-GMO. And I was actually talking with you and a buddy of ours, Deacon, right? Last night, I think it was, about ketchup. My favorite ketchup has been discontinued.
Yeah.
And people are like, "Oh, you have a favorite ketchup?" Yes. Yes, I do. And I had it one time on the West Coast and didn't know anything about it. I was having a burger. It was like I was at a meeting and someone had brought in the food, and I was like, all right, I got this burger, got these fries. Here's some ketchup. And it was a little ketchup packet, right? I don't know the brand. I don't care. But I put it on my fries or whatever, and I ate them and was like, okay, that's different. Right? And so I took a picture of the packet of ketchup,
Sure.
flew back home, and was like, I want to buy that ketchup. I went all over and I couldn't find it. Ended up ordering a case of this stuff.
That's
and
right there.
well, it turns out it's non-GMO, and that was their whole thing was the freshest possible ingredients.
Yeah.
Their whole thing, and I was like, it was actually a better ketchup to me. And so there is something to be said for chasing natural foods, and you're a bit of a food snob, in a good way. Don't mean that in a derogatory way.
Oh,
but
no,
you
I
actually care a lot about your food and how it's prepared, and I think there's going to be an interesting set of news cycles around this genetically created, modified, grown meat. And chicken's the first, but Jurassic Park had to start somewhere, right?
I think for me the biggest thing, and I'll admit I'm a food snob 100%, but don't get me wrong, I'll go down to Jack in the Crack and get a burger in a heartbeat because it's delicious, right?
Jack in the Crack, is that a
Jack in the Box?
Is that Jack in the Box? Okay.
but
Thought you go Whataburger.
Yeah, no. Whataburger's gone way down. But anyway, but the reason I'm that way is because of my upbringing. I had growing up around me, we had a garden. We always had vegetables, so I always had canned homemade pickles and jams and jellies and all this stuff, and it was all the only things that were added were the fruit and sugar or the vegetable and vinegar or so it was very straightforward ingredients. And to me and you and I kind of briefly talked on this before is I talk about HEB, and I think that's where I've become a true Texan because, everything's better here, but I talk about HEB as having their own products just like any other supermarket. But if you buy their products, like there's a bag of corn chips in there and you turn it over and you look at the ingredients and it literally says corn mace and then cooked in sunflower oil and salt, sea salt. And that's literally the ingredients. No motto, sodium, glutamate, blah, 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 all these chemical names, and that to me is huge. So, and I would be willing to believe that the ketchup you like is probably pretty similar, right? It's probably like white vinegar.
That's what it turned out to
and,
be, right? I didn't know that, right? When I bought it, I just liked it, and then I got it. And I was looking at it. I was like, okay, their whole thing is that, right? It's natural food. There's a show that I've been in the same room as someone else was watching it for quite a bit of time, The Bear. And it's about a restaurant family, and you may actually like this show. But one of the episodes we were watching last night was a woman who wants to be a chef, right? And she's trying to make her recipe, and she's going to start her own restaurant, and she's making her recipes. And one of the things she does is she goes out and she tastes, right, all these different restaurants around the city. She's going to go out and she's going to taste them because she's trying to get her palate to a point where she's being creative. And so she's going into tasting these things, and then she goes into the kitchen and she's going to make this recipe. And what it turns out to be is she went way over the top and got too creative. Right, and it's like 15 ingredients, prepared 7 different ways, and the other chef comes in and is like, "Chef, this is too much. You need like 2 ingredients or 3, but they gotta be on point and they gotta be prepared perfect." That's the magic.
Yeah.
is it's not a surprise that I'm eating a
Yeah.
scallop, right? Like my favorite restaurant I've ever been to was there was a scallop, right? And I was like, I have to get scallops. Well, I didn't know this, but they flew them in every morning from Maine, and they had a special order, right?
wow.
And so I get these scallops, and it's just a scallop prepared well, a little bit of butter, a little pepper on top. That's it.
Yeah.
And you take a bite, and it's like, okay, that's the best scallop I ever had.
Yeah.
You know, someone handed me a
And-
mango the other day, dude.
Oh,
Same
man.
thing. Someone
So
gave me a
good.
mango. I had never tasted. It was a lot closer to a peach than I thought it was. So
Yeah.
they gave me this mango, and they were like, "Look, it was a birthday present. In fact, guy gave me a single mango for a birthday present.
Interesting.
He hands it to me. Yeah, he hands it to me, and I'm like, "Thank you." And he said, "Oh no, thank me later." And I tell you, I came home, I cut the thing, and we ate it. And I was like, "Holy, wow, that is amazing."
You never had mango before?
Oh no, I've had mangoes.
Okay. This one's just ripe and it was good and
Well, he gets it imported.
okay.
He's got a special source for a mango on a farm, right? And it's a different thing when
Sure.
it's that close to
Yeah.
the real.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think I have the problem with a lot of the foods now is I don't know where it came from, but for some reason we have it in our heads today that we have to reproduce what nature already provides. Maybe it's the more cheaper, faster mentality. I don't know if that's but to me it's like if you and I talked about fresh baked bread the other day.
Yep.
Fresh baked bread with the basic yeast, flour, salt, maybe a pinch of sugar, don't need sugar, whatever, is the most amazing tasting bread ever. And yet you go and read the instruction, there's like 35 different ingredients in bread in the store right now, right? Like, and that's the other thing is I don't know if I've ever told you, but like at one point I wanted to be a nutritionist when I was getting
No,
out
we're
of the
not talking
Navy.
about that.
So I'm a certified nutritionist, and so for me, I also know how your body metabolizes a lot of these chemicals and stuff, and how it stores a lot of that stuff and or doesn't, And so for me, ingredients are really important. That's probably fed into my food snobbery, But it's like, yeah, I don't know. I can't get on board. I would have to get to a point where a pack of chicken is like $100 for a pack of chicken for me to consider getting a chicken breast that's never actually been on a chicken.
Yeah, and that one would be $20. Let's say $20 a pound
Right.
or whatever it is. Yeah.
And that's what I'm worried about is that this is the first step towards, okay, we figured it out. Now make it super cheap so we can make all of the chicken farmers lose business, right? That's
Yeah,
what worries
yeah.
me. So
So there's probably not a good path from being a chicken farmer to being a molecular biologist in a lab in San Francisco. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think so. I don't
Probably
know,
not
man.
that job waiting on them, to cruise off of
Yeah.
their chicken farm in Iowa and arrive in San Francisco. Hey, my farm is closed down. I'm here for a job. They're probably not going to get a job there, right?
Not going to happen because they've got
Yeah.
their Impossible Chicken now, right? Like, and by the way, I looked at an Impossible Burger because I was thinking about trying it, and just looking at it made me decide.
Like, you mean you laid eyes upon an Impossible
Yeah.
Burger? Is that what
Yeah,
you mean?
I
You didn't
went
look
to-
at it
I
like
went to-
online. You went.
No. I went to dinner with my brother and some family members, and they're vegetarian, strictly vegetarian. And so they told my brother to pick up some Impossible Burgers. I never had them before, but I looked at it, and it looked like, to me, it looked like a giant pencil eraser that had been sliced into wafers. That's what it looked like to me.
Okay. Now,
I don't
Impossible
know how
Burgers,
else
those
to
are
describe it.
yeah, those are primarily plant based too. So that's a really good
It is
point
plant-based.
because
It's
they're
completely.
so Impossible Burgers. That's I think it was Burger King that came out and they were like, hey, we got the Impossible Burger. If you're a vegan, you can eat here. Or if you're a vegetarian, you can eat here. So what was interesting, lab grown meat, vegan friendly?
I mean, it should. Oh, that's a valid. Actually, that's a valid question. So at some point, are we going to have lab-grown beef and bacon?
Oh, well, you get my attention when you get that bacon on there because I'll try some
'Cause-
varieties of bacon now.
Because right now they got tofurkey, right?
Yeah.
And it's not. It's not.
I mean, are there vegans out there saying, "Oh my God, grow it in a lab. It's no kill," right? So now I'm curious.
yeah, I suppose that would depend on why the person's a vegan, right? That's interesting. That's an interesting thought process there.
I like how it locks you
should've-
up.
That's how we should have put it. Should have put that in there. Will vegans be able to eat chicken now?
Yeah,
that's a valid
is it,
question.
Is it I wonder, if you're vegan. I know quite a few vegans. We've got some friends who are vegans for different reasons, right? You've got some people who are vegan for one reason, and some people who are vegans for another. And I would be really curious to talk to them about this. I'm going to try that in the next few days. I'll hit them up and be
That's
like,
interesting.
hey, look, this lab grown meat. Can we go have wings now? Right? Like, is this back on the menu, or are you still like, no, I'm going to have seitan? Right? Like, is this where are we here?
That's interesting.
Tofu.
You did throw me for a loop with that one. I wasn't expecting that thought.
I definitely don't have an answer to it, but I am curious now. If there's lab grown meat, it's no kill. It never had a face.
For sure. Never had a face. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah. So all right. Well, as meat, lab grown meat gets out of control, gets out of the lab, the growth process can't be stopped, and as this lab grown meat takes over the Bay Area in California, and it's just a big meat wad, running off into the Pacific. So
that's what the disaster in California is going to be. It's not going to be an
I
earthquake.
think so.
Or...
Yeah, I think so. I think we've now established. Chicken. Yeah, someone's going to be like, I have a hyper growth hormone I can add to this chicken, and it's going to be like they're going to add it. It's like, oh my God, scientist blob. X, you're amazing, and he's going to put a drop in there, and it's going to be,
oh my God,
and it's going to take over the whole Bay Area.
Pretty
I'm
scary.
convinced.
I don't care what you say, actually.
Oh, no, terrifying.
Vat grown meat. I'm just serious. Vat grown meat to me, it's upsetting to me that we've gone to that level.
You think we jumped the shark?
A little bit.
Proof that we're in a simulation. Chickens can be made in a vat.
Anyways, what do we have?
So next up, without a good segue, we never found one, which doesn't surprise me given the subject change. Usually I do a little bit better job of ordering these.
Yeah, this one's not easy. I threw a couple of them too. So.
Yeah, this one is going to be interesting to talk about, and this really comes from a couple of conversations. A lot of times, full disclosure, when we're getting these subjects together, it's Hapa and I sending back and forth news articles, from AP or whoever it is, and we're like, oh, let's read up on this and learn a little bit about it. This one, however, came out of a conversation, or really a series of conversations we've been having for a while. And it's around work ethic among young people, and I don't want to go, Generation Z or lizard people. I'm not going to do that, right? But it is how work ethic is being impacted as we trend further into the future. Young people just being the further into the future people. So what are your thoughts? You threw this one here.
I definitely think there's some validity there. I mean, from what I noted, there at least is a pretty prominent mentality of people that want to, in a fashion, I agree with the mentality. Like, the thinking is solid, but it doesn't help anybody, right? So I want to get the most that I possibly can get for the minimalist amount of work that I could possibly do, which is a good thought process, right? Because no company gives a crap about their employees. I don't care what any company says, right? At the end of the day, you're just a number, and they will get another number regardless. But I think some thought process towards professionalism has shifted away from, like I grew up, I don't know how you grew up, but I grew up, if you're going to do something, do it right. Period. Like, do it right, do it to your best extent possible. And that's how you should be. Period. Your word's your bond, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted to make sure, to be clear, I'm not trying to say, like, everybody younger than me is just garbage. Like, I'm not trying to say that at all. I just...
old man Hapa has
get
appeared
off my
on this
lawn.
Podcast today. Yes. Yeah, it's been an interesting...
and you definitely have a better perspective, right, than I do, obviously.
I don't know that I have a better perspective. I definitely wouldn't say that. I have a perspective, and I want to go back really to how I was raised, because I was raised that hard work in and of itself is a reward. And if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Never half-ass anything, whole-ass, one thing. And there's been formative moments in my life, and I realized at some point that the work I was doing was rewarding, but I treated it like a craft. And one of the perspectives I've kind of formed over the past however many years is there are still people out there who find the thing that they love. And they treat it like their craft. In other words, if you have an artist who's going to work with clay and they want to be amazing, the amount of energy, time, attention they'll put into working that clay is pretty staggering.
Right.
Paint's the same way, music, whatever it is. And to a degree, it used to be that people combined that passion with work.
Right.
And I think now what I'm witnessing is people are pretty dispassionate towards work a lot of times.
Yeah.
And I think that there's, there is a trend where people are like, no, I want to do less work and live more life. And I don't disagree with that trend in any way, shape, or form. But there are times when it goes flatly to an unprofessional state. And there's I spent a couple of years actually doing research into professionalism. And I was wanting to talk about this here because honestly, I don't get to talk about it anywhere else. So this is a really interesting moment. But I spent a bunch of time and I went around and interviewed, and it was hundreds of people. And what I was trying to do, because I was doing it for a nonprofit that I was helping out, and I was helping out this not-for-profit organization, and their job was to prepare people for a professional career who had not been raised in a professional home, did not have a professional mentor, had never been exposed to that. So I was working with this group and I went around and interviewed all these people. And the question I asked every single one of them, I sat them down, took them to lunch, took them to coffee, just sat them down and asked them the question, what does it mean to be professional? And the most fascinating thing came out of that for me. Not a single one of those people could define being a professional, except to say what's not professional. And so every one of them, instead of saying, oh, here's what a professional is, they would say, here's what you do that is unprofessional, and that keeps you from being a professional. So it's being late, it's dressing sloppy, whatever the things were that they had in their particular list. And the lists varied. There was a lot of common things in there, but the lists varied. And I thought, what a fascinating thing that as a society, and this is my take on this, right? I'm not a researcher. I've worked with plenty of researchers, so I am not a human being who's like, I did my research. No. I've worked with those people.
Right.
No. I didn't do research. I read a website. Right? They do research. So I'm not a researcher, and so this is, just what I took from that is the term professionalism in and of itself is decaying. We as a society had learned a shared, I guarantee if you and I sat down, we could look at someone and say it's professional, not professional, we could go down the list. And here's the example that came out of it. Picture a thug, okay? Now picture an assassin. One of those is a professional.
Right, yeah, for sure.
They do the same job, but everything you pictured, one of them's a professional, right? And so you can really dig into that, and I find it fascinating because I just don't think, I think there's an awful lot of people younger now, and it's not everyone, but an awful lot of people who are younger now who just don't care about being a professional. They don't care about the craft. They don't care about saying, I'm the best electrician that has ever been. It's not important to them. And that is literally how I've lived my entire life. If I'm doing a thing, it's because I'm going to do it all the way. I'm passionate about it. That's my craft. Right. If I'm going to go play golf, I'm getting back into golf, right? I'm going to work. I want to be good at it. I want to be. So I don't know. To me, it's a different. We're definitely witnessing a shift. Definitely witnessing a shift here.
Where do you think this might be coming from, or might have occurred as a result of?
Yeah.
I know that's a kind of a broad question.
It's a loaded question. I would say I would love to know if this is an international problem or a North American problem.
Okay.
We are post-industrial in North America. An awful lot of people, I think you hear about student debt and you hear about all these things, and that's because an awful lot of people were sold the dream of you go get a 4-year degree and you're going to make $150,000 a year. And what happened was you got a 4-year degree and couldn't find a job. Because literally everyone else was told, go get a 4-year degree. And, so that was a whole system that occurred. And I think there's an awful lot of time. There was a time, 20 years, 30 years, some amount, between the 90s and now, where there was an assumption that you could have a desk job or a job that is and look, those jobs are demanding. Being an attorney is a demanding job. Being a doctor is a demanding job. It's not a manual labor job in the same fashion as what a lot of people think, but you definitely is demanding of you, and they earn their money. And so I think a lot of people, however, they got that mixed up, and they thought, oh, I get to go have a job making tons of money, and they never put together the work, right? And I saw this the first time I was exposed to it. I think the first time I really noted this was bands. So you're in a band, you're performing on a stage. So you got a crowd, 400 people, right? Loving what you're doing. Inevitably, there's someone who wants to hop on the stage and play a harmonica, who wants to Oh, can y'all do this song? Everybody wants to be part of it. Here's the thing. None of y'all put in the work.
Yeah, yeah.
And so people assume you have people come try out. Oh, yeah, we know we rehearse 3 times a week. You do what? We rehearse 3 times a week and load ins at 4. We don't play till midnight. I'm fully aware of what time we play. Load outs at 4 a.m. Load ins at 4 p.m. So 12 hours. Yeah. For a 3-hour set? Yep. For $100? Uh-huh.
And that's dedication.
And that's what you're doing is it's the craft, right? And it's not about the monetary reward. Sometimes the work is the reward.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's how I was raised, and I don't think we're raising people that way anymore. Like work and the ability to work and the blessing, right, to be capable of working, especially if you have a physical job, like enjoy that.
Sure.
Like not everyone can do it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's so that's what I was given. So, and I'd love to know with the way you were raised, how does that play out for you?
I was very much raised with the if you want something, you need to earn it, and that was it. You my first car, you had to earn it. The clothes that you want, what are you doing to earn it? You know, and so that mentality stuck with me. And I know, you know, growing up, my dad was in the Navy, and he retired from the Navy, switched to climbing telephone poles for the phone company. And that man was working. Yeah,
so
he was a lineman.
Lineman work. Yeah, yeah.
And he worked. I'm not kidding you. I remember when I was young, because I used to get up at the same time he did, like 4 a.m, and he would go into work, and he wouldn't be home till 7 or 8 at night. Like
absolutely,
that was every single day.
Now this
sometimes
was in
the weekends.
Where was this geographically?
In Portland, in Oregon.
So the linemen here, because we have so many storms, the linemen here get called upon to travel. Does that happen in Oregon as well, where it's like, you need to go down and?
Not so much. During that time, I don't think. And by the time I think a lot of that stuff started happening, they were hiring more local
Gotcha.
here and there. They didn't really worry about like I'm just going to hire 20 and then throw them on a truck and go, right?
Gotcha.
But like growing up, I remember my dad. He's allergic to bees. He opened a transformer and there was a giant hornet's nest in there.
Yeah.
And my dad, I still remember this too. I was like 6 maybe. In order for him to get away from that hornet's nest, my dad had cleats on his boots and then a big belt, leather belt that went around, you know, like a lineman. My dad just disconnected the belt, hugged the telephone pole, and used the gaffs to go down. So you can imagine how damaged and screwed up he was when he got down. And my mom always used to tell, like, she was pulling splinters out of his chest for weeks and weeks and weeks. He was in traction, all this stuff. And then 6 months later, he was back out there doing it again because he had to. He had a family to support, you know. And so that's how I was raised. And one thing I do want to mention is, and I really, really, really want to make sure that I get this across to people, is I'm not saying that everyone in the younger generations this way, because there are young folks out there busting their butts. And one of the things that I saw that was really humbling to me and really blew me away was the last year I was in the Navy, when I knew I was retiring from the Navy. I opened my eyes a lot more and watched what the kids around me were doing. Like 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that were handling evolutions, handling ordnance, guiding aircraft, driving multi-billion-dollar warships, like doing the Lord's work, like doing the business of the U.S. military. And these were kids that might have come from broken homes, or might have come from rich upbringings, or might have, you know, they're all walks of life. You know, one of the kids that I was her mentor, she was 18 years old, and when I met her, she had graduated high school 6 months earlier, right? So she graduated high school, left for the military, checked on board the ship, and one of the last evolutions I watched, because she was scared. She was being pushed to be a captain, a plane captain, which the plane captains are out on the flight deck, you know, that whole thing with they got the lights and they're directing aircraft, but they're on a warship flight deck that's pitching and rolling and yawing with an aircraft coming in. And this girl was a little 5'3" Puerto Rican girl that was like 100 pounds soaking wet, and she's out there guiding this aircraft in that had like 16 Marines on it, and all this equipment on board, and scared as shit. She told me, she was like, Chief, I'm so scared. It's like, just go do it. Go freaking do it. You're able to do it. You've been trained. Go do it. And I sat back there on above the flight deck watching, and this little kid couldn't even drink a beer, right?
Yeah. No,
freaking
yeah.
Bringing in the aircraft, and she did it perfectly. And that, to me, like, every time I saw something like that, it restored a little bit of confidence in the youth, because they're out there every single day busting their butts doing the thing, you see that all over the place. So I don't want people to think that that's not the case, but I do agree with you, though.
Proud brag, right? Yesterday my 14-year-old daughter went for her first job interview, right? So it's
scary.
not that it's oh my God, dude. You want to feel old? That's how you feel old. So it's definitely, we're not saying that, but we are, I think that the broader subject that I'm hoping that we drive at is, are we moving away as a society from hard work? Is that an international thing? And is that a thing that maybe because we have gotten pretty comfortable here in this country, North America in general, right? We don't have to work as hard. And there's, this is a result of generational raising, right? So
yeah.
My kids are not necessarily being raised to be out in the fields, plowing the fields. I was, baling hay at 12 years old and working construction at 13, right? So they definitely have a different upbringing than I have. And so maybe that's all contributing to, maybe there's a healthier shift. Maybe the corporations have been in control too long, right?
Yeah.
There've been labor movements in the past for a reason, right? Because companies, like you said, you're just a number to a company. A company's first priority is not happy employees. A company's first priority is to make money. Now, happy employees, if you're at a good company, makes it to like number 2 or 3 on the list. But, or a company sees like really happy employees, engaged employees, makes us more money, therefore we'll do it. If you're at a good company, you can end up with that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, the company's got to make money, because it's not a company anymore. So, I think there's a really interesting conversation. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll keep talking about it for sure. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to observe, if nothing more.
Well, and I think it needs to shift. It definitely needs to shift, though, because you've got, not to go on too much longer, but the workforce that maintains a lot of the infrastructure, does a lot of the construction, does all of that infrastructure is progressively getting older and older because younger folks are not coming in to replace them.
Oh, it's the trade skills are if you want to make a lot of money, get a trade skill.
Yeah, for sure.
That's one of the most interesting things. I think people assume, there is a long time where people were like, I've got to go get a 4-year psychology degree and that's going to give me some job. And 6.8 trillion people graduated that same minute with a psychology degree. And it's really not applicable in, many jobs. If you have a different set of skills, a psychology degree can be useful as an example, right? To combine with that. But in like psychology, I think being a great example, you're going to go for a master's and PhD if you want to really get deep into that as a practice field. In combination with other things, it's great. But a lot of people are having a hard time finding a job with a history degree or a literature degree, right? There's these degrees out there that to a large degree end up being fairly academic, and you have to combine them. And a trade skill, right? I'm going to be an electrician's apprentice. I'm going to become an electrician. There's a lot, at least in my area, of construction, plumbing, electrician, things that hold the world together, both commercial and residential. Yeah. And industrial, for that matter.
Yeah.
That are pulling over $200,000, right? Because it's their business and they do it their way, and they're working their schedule, and they get to go to their kids' birthday parties, and they get to go on vacations, right? Because they make their schedule. So, I would encourage people to find a craft that they're passionate about and treat it like a craft. Yeah.
I mean, and I'd like to also add to that stuff is noticed when you act like that with your profession. It is recognized. It may not, unfortunately, be recognized at the higher corporate level always, but to those that are around you, it's typically recognized and noticed. Like, it is
at the
noticed
risk
when
of
you're a high performer.
At the risk of someone hearing this and putting 2 and 2 together, I'm going to describe a guy I work with. All right, first job. He's not from here. He's from another country. And I want to describe him to you the way someone described him to me. This was, what is today? Tuesday? It was yesterday. Guy sits next to me. He looked over and he said, "That guy. What about him? He gets in everything. I don't care what it is. What we've got going on, he shows up, got a fantastic attitude, and he puts in two hands and helps out. And it doesn't matter what it is." And what do you think the next thing was? Oh, that guy's going somewhere.
For sure.
Right? So you put those two descriptions together and you've said, have a great attitude, be willing to jump in, be willing to be helpful. People will notice.
100%. Well, as a manager or upper management, there's two reasons that you'll remember a subordinate. It's usually amazingly good or amazingly bad. Typically, that's how you remember somebody. And obviously, you want to be on the good scale.
Yeah. I saw a thing today where even in certain worlds, being really good at what you do gives you enough leeway to have a horrible attitude, and I think that is also going away.
Yeah.
I think that there was a time when there were certain jobs, where people could be, as people would say, and colloquially they would say divas or whatever the case may be, and I think that's actually going away too. I think that I think a lot of people are realizing like you don't get to just be a toxic jerk no matter how good you are at something, right? So speaking of toxic jerks,
but I think that's good.
Yeah, speaking of toxic jerks, next subject, right, is
hey, segue.
Would arresting Vladimir Putin mean war? And there was a story that came out. This one was mine, so I'll start it.
Sure.
There was a story that came out, and I was reading about it, and there was a conference in South Africa, and a set of countries was going to attend this conference, and Vladimir Putin said, "Hey, I'm interested." Russia was one of the countries, and he said, "Hey, I'm interested in going to this conference." And the big brouhaha was the leadership of South Africa said, "Hey, you know what? Please don't, please don't do that. There is an international warrant out for Vladimir Putin's arrest for war crimes related to Ukraine." And South Africa was like, I really wish you wouldn't, because we're going to be in a state of moral dilemma where, you're considered an ally. Russia is an ally, right? And they do work with Russia and, South Africa, and they work together, and they're like, look, but if you come, I'm obligated to arrest you. And then, of course, the Russians, they say, well, that's an act of war. And so it was a really tense, I think it was about a week, where it was kind of left up in the air, like maybe Vladimir Putin's going to come, go to South Africa and force the issue. And it became a really interesting kind of geopolitical conversation for me and some folks that I knew, because it was like, well, is arresting someone who has a warrant out for their arrest, is that an act of war? And I guess further for me, so what, right? And what's Russia going to do to South Africa? Like, Wagner's got a long way to go. They're in North Africa now.
Yeah.
That's a long way to march.
Yeah.
Right? If Moscow was a tough haul for you, I imagine making it all the way from one end of Africa to the other is going to prove tough. Like, if your logistical chain was tough to get into Ukraine, I think you're going to have a hard time with Africa.
Right.
So, but very fascinating story, I thought. So what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Well, I think, and again, we're not going to get into politics so much, but geopolitically, we're in a weird place, because you've got economies that have the ability to possibly influence, or they don't have the ability, they are influencing the smaller economies throughout the world, being China, Russia, India, these countries that have been, people have known they've been getting stronger economically over the years, and they're starting to exert that a little bit more. And I'm not saying that they don't have the right to trade and stuff with other nations, because I think that's kind of arrogant of us to say that you don't. But at the same time, South Africa recognizes that they also do business with the other side of the line, which is everyone else in the world, right? So
Yep.
You're not wrong in the thought process of, the idea of trying to get troops from historically landlocked area to not necessarily landlocked area. That just ain't gonna happen, bro. Like, you're not gonna do that. Like, it's just not gonna happen. I mean, if you do, the ramifications globally are that would probably be a World War III level idiocracy that would occur.
Sure, and that's really the conversation is, I mean, look, Russia says at this point, Russia says a lot of things are acts of war.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
You
they
know,
say everything's
you know,
act of war.
you gave someone an ice cream sandwich. That's an act of
Yeah,
war. You know,
right.
I saw you give this ice cream sandwich. That's an act of war. And at the end of it, it's this organization called BRICS, and I'm going to read this off. Right, I'm reading from NPR, but there's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are involved in this, and it's a economic summit. And as of 6 days ago, at least, it's next month, right, is when the event occurs. But as of 6 days ago, both Russia and South Africa have confirmed that Vladimir Putin will not be attending in person. He will be present via video and a full participant. And it is the top leaders of every one of those countries. So it's a pretty interesting statement to say, hey, you know, that's where we are in the world. Is we have a world leader who has an international arrest warrant out for them.
Yeah.
Who is apparently also interested in state play, right?
Yeah.
And interested in going and participating in economic summits with allies. That's just a fascinating. The whole situation with Russia and Ukraine right now is fascinating. They need to sort it out because on my bucket list, I want to go to Moscow, right? That's one of the things I want to do.
Yeah,
I've always wanted to see Moscow, beautiful place, best I can tell, beautiful people. And I would love to see it. You know, it's on my kid's bucket list. He's like, I want to go to Moscow, and they're screwing it up for me. So, like, just selfishly, like, stop so we can be tourists again.
I mean, that was one of the things that really upset me about leaving wargaming was because I wanted to go to St. Petersburg, and I wanted to visit Russia myself, you know, at some point. But I'll be honest, I applaud the South African leader for publicly saying that also, because that really shows the world, in my opinion, the value of his leadership and position in that agreement, right? Because in the past, the bigger economies, China and Russia, would just say, "Nah, you're going to do what I tell you." And
sure.
That's essentially what happened, right?
Interpol aside, you know, I do wonder. Let's say the alternative occurs, and I'm just going to theory play this out. Let's say Vladimir Putin's like, "No, I'm going to go," and South Africa makes the decision that, hey, you know what? They're too important of an ally, and I'm not going to do anything about it. What does Interpol's play there, right? Is it a you know, it's if a country's not participating, are they? Like that could have had a whole different set of ramifications. You know, when you're talking about extraditions and all this other things that could have gone on. So it's a very interesting story that came out. I thought it was interesting to talk about. We debated on whether to even have the conversation, but kind of glad we did, because one of the things we were talking about is, you know, the KGB, and we had watched a show. Both of us had watched a show, and we'll have no spoilers, but we're going to talk about the show that is Chernobyl. And by the way, if anyone hasn't seen it, yeah, it's on what do they call it now? It's not HBO
it's
Max. It's
Max
just
now.
Max, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think it had been months. You had told me go watch Chernobyl, and I had not done it. And I finally got it down to my list. I had this whole long list for anyone who doesn't know of these things.
That was a year ago, Chet. Everybody that's listening, it was a year ago. I said that.
Yeah, that tracks. That tracks, actually. And so, you know, went and watched Chernobyl. But one of the most interesting parts of Chernobyl is kind of the representation of the Russian decision-making process, the government, the KGB in particular. And, you know, you wonder, right, how powerful are those organizations? And then we really wondered, you know, we could talk about Russia, but we could talk about any country, right? It could be the United States of America. It's not excluded. If Interpol decided that, you know, our president had done something that was arrest-worthy, the same conversations would potentially be had. So it's a very interesting set of circumstances we have, you know, with Vladimir Putin in the center of them, right? I think it's pretty interesting. All right, Happa, next. Our old friend, Elon Musk, who we've now had a single podcast where we didn't talk about Twitter.
Just one, Chat.
One. This is the sixth one, and we had one where we didn't talk about Twitter, and we're going to talk about it again because Elon Musk has announced that it's no longer going to be called Twitter. It's going to be called X. Now, a little bit of history lesson. Elon Musk, debatable, right? He said he came from a long family of jewel mining, and then later said, I don't know where you got that story from. That's not at all where I came from. I made myself all my money. But undebatable is he was one of the original founders of what became PayPal.
Yep.
It's where his first big payday came from. And back then, he wanted to name that X.com. I don't know if you knew this. He wanted
I
to
did
name
not.
PayPal X.com. The board said, I think this guy's a bit of a loose handle. We're gonna vote him out and get a CEO in here, and so that's where PayPal came from. So Musk has continued on his way. His son is named X, and now he is named Twitter X. So it's
So you
no
got
longer
SpaceX,
tweets.
you got X.
Yep. You got SpaceX. You got X. His kid, his name is X. They're no longer tweets. There's Zeets. He's calling them X E E
Is
T
that has
S.
he officially said that publicly? Because I saw that as a meme. I didn't know if it was
I
publicly.
saw it, and I saw X videos, right, which is a
Okay,
whole.
okay.
So yeah. What are your thoughts on? What are your
Well,
well,
so-
okay, and of course it comes out that Microsoft and 14,000 other companies own the patent or the trademark of X, right? Like everybody thinks they own it now.
I mean, it's a letter. Like, how can you
Right.
own? I mean, whatever. Okay, it is what it is. So I've been pushing back against a lot of the not thought process, but the ideas that Seven has. Not necessarily because I disagree with them, but I try to be a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? I try to be a little bit. I don't want to say open-minded because that would imply that you're closed-minded, which you definitely are not. Like not a voice of reason. Even I don't even know what I'm trying to say at this point. But what I was saying was now looking at the process of all the crap that has gone on through the acquiring of Twitter all the way through to this. I was kind of thinking about the conversations we've had over the past year about this. And
because we have been talking about it for the
we
past
have been
year.
it hasn't been often, but it has
Yes.
been over a year.
But we have talked about it.
but it clicked in my head. I thought this whole time he's had the idea, I bet you, in the back of his head that he wanted to have or start a social media outlet, but he recognized that you're not starting any more social media outlets and having them be successful unless you built something for the CCCP and had their 2 billion people over there start using it and then launch it globally, right? You're not starting another Twitter, another Instagram, another Face and having it be successful. So the only way that you could get a social media outlet to get to the size you want and flourish is to literally buy one that's already there and then slowly debrand out of what it was and build it into what you want. And I think that's what he's honestly been doing. All this crap with the getting rid of the ex-Twitter employees, not paying rent, so the offices are going into, they're being closed because at the end of the day, the math actually for the rent to property value to court costs, it was cheaper for him to actually pay the court costs than to pay the back rent. Like that was cheaper for him. So it was a business dirty. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna agree with that 100%. But I think that's honestly what he's doing. He's like, I already got. I don't know how many users there are for Twitter globally,
There's 7.
but just 7. I thought there was 9. Damn it.
One of them.
Like,
one of
I
them
think
moved to a
that's
different
what, I
platform.
think that's what he did. I think that was his whole master plan in the back of the boardroom, rolling his freaking hands in the dark room. I think that was his master, and he's slowly molding Twitter into his social media platform that he wanted, like legit. I think is it ridiculous? 100%. It's freaking ridiculous. The vanity that's going on, the hubris.
The hubris is we as a planet may have never witnessed more hubris. And my thoughts on Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I think he's both hero and villain a lot of times. And
I agree. I don't disagree with that.
I think that he's probably not anywhere near as smart as as most people think he is. He's definitely not as smart as he thinks he is.
Sure.
And I think Twitter is to a large degree showing that some of the approaches he's taken. I happen to know a lot about that particular industry, and that some of the things he's done have been crazy. And the rebrand that might be genius. You don't know, right? He's on either side of that, right? Hero or villain, genius or maniac, right? And the line between them is thinner than most people want to admit. And it's been really fascinating to me because Facebook made a play, right? So there's this whole drama that unfolded with Facebook launching Threads, So anyone that's not familiar, I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson here. So Facebook is Facebook. Facebook purchased Instagram, right? Instagram was originally independent. Facebook purchased Instagram, which is actually part of the problem that HAPA was hitting on. There used to be a lot of social media platforms. Over a period of time, they consolidated. So the bigger ones, the one that was 20% bigger, bought the smaller one. They didn't keep it, they killed it. Then maybe they kept some of the features, maybe they took video, whatever. They killed it. They killed it. They killed Vine. You remember these things? Like these, you can look down the path, and you ended up with a couple of players in the field, and then very hard to break into if you're not one of those players. And so Twitter really was pretty immune to actual failure, right? Short of just going offline. It wasn't like the users were necessarily going to leave. Now, advertisers, on the other hand, said, no, I'm out. But users were still going to be there. So it was still going to have value from an information dissemination standpoint, from news. It was still going to have some value, right? People were going to use it. And Facebook was waning, right? And Facebook had become known as Granny's complain site. And it was just like not a lot of people use it. Now, Instagram's still pretty popular. Yes, it's the Hallmark movie of websites, right? Like, but Instagram was still pretty popular. And so Mark Zuckerberg, again, hero, villain, genius, maniac, did an interesting thing, and he launched an app called Threads. And Threads is almost an exact replica of Twitter.
Yeah.
Now, in this meantime, right, while this is going on, you've got Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg saying, we're going to have a mixed martial arts fight. And
which I think is amazing, by the way.
Oh my God. I'd pay whatever Twitter Blue costs to watch it. Right,
Let's
quarter,
go.
whatever it is. And they said, hey, we're going to fight. And Elon Musk was like, I'm in. It's on. And Zuckerberg's like, I'm in. It's on. And then Mark Zuckerberg's mom like, it's not on. Marky can't come out to play. I told him to clean his room. He cannot fight with you, Elon. And so then this Threads thing comes out. And then Elon Musk is like, well, we're no longer Twitter. We're X. And it was, to me, the most odd 90s flex. Have you ever seen the movie? What's the Halloween movie? It's got Sarah Jessica Parker in it, the witches.
Oh. Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus. Do you remember when the guy goes, I told you I'm ice? And he points at the back of his head. That's what X feels like to me. He's like, I've had this laying around since 1998. I was really proud when I got it because that was super cool. I've never found a way to use it. And so now he's like, so the rebrand, I can get behind a rebrand if he wants to do that. I would never do that, right? From a brand recognition. You're talking about Twitter. Twitter is up there with Nike.
Yeah, for sure. That
Coca-Cola,
that little bird
Toyota,
is a known
Mercedes, 100%. One of the most known representations. You just threw it out, right?
Yeah.
And then you went with something as generic as an X, which is just it literally isn't a logo. It's just one of the public available open source fonts. This is like X.
Helvetica 12 point.
Yeah, exactly. It's Verdana, right? I mean, might as well use Comic Sans. That would have been
right. That would have been pretty amazing. Actually,
I would have been like, all right,
everything. Come on,
little Comic Sans. That. So it's a really interesting thing to watch, and I would love to say we'll never talk about this again.
Did you start a Threads account?
I do have a Threads. I got one yesterday.
So I thought about it, and then I did some reading and saw that Zuck basically said that they will be censoring. They will be 100%.
Oh, sure.
Be censoring. And that to me is like, I have a pretty thick skin. I don't care if people call me names or say things about me that are, publicly or whatever. And for me, maybe that would be different if I was a bigger star, or a star for that matter. But like, to me, I don't think social media should be that way. I don't think social media should
be
filter
censored?
any of that stuff. Like,
so there was an interesting thing that occurred, and I'm old enough to remember this and happen to be in that industry, right? And social media sites went through an entire there was it was the United States of America making this decision, right? So it was before Congress, and there was all these
Sure.
conversations. Facebook was part of it, Tumblr, right? Some others.
Yeah.
But there was this conversation about were they responsible for the content on their sites, and so what was happening was things that were far more devious than name calling at the time, and the conversation was they were going to be held liable, right, for what a user posted. So let's say you go and you post something on their website. The law was like something illegal occurred. You can't.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. You can't take pictures of people in that group and post them in that manner.
I gotcha. Yeah.
And so an illegal thing occurred. Who do I hold accountable for that? Is it the person that posted the picture, or is it the site that it was hosted on?
Gotcha.
And there was a big back and forth. And from a legal standpoint, what happened was these sites got a specific exception. So social media sites have a very specific set of exceptions, which means they will not be held liable for content that was posted by users if and only if they police it to the satisfaction of the United States government. So when you talk to Facebook, you talk to Elon Musk, he was not part of that. So his approach on walking into Twitter is it's going to be, wild, wild west. What it turns out is it's everyone who, I let things except insults to Elon Musk. Those can't go. So he started pretty quickly. He started cherry picking. Well, not that, but not that. So I think a lot of people start off with like the kind of idealistic, we shouldn't censor. And then there's like all the way over on we censor everything, right? So it only has one opinion.
Yeah.
And I think there's a middle ground somewhere where the nastiest, and one of the things I read one time, I saw a documentary, but was the people at Facebook who actually have to
Oh my God!
have to see the complaints.
Imagine. Yeah, I could
if a post gets complained, and they have to go be the people. There's actually it's a set of human beings who are like, oh yeah, that don't go. Oh no, yeah, that can't. No, we can't. Right, and then they have to go into like our arbitration, place where it's like so people can say, oh, that was actually okay because it was art, right, or whatever it is. And yeah, so it's a really interesting. This is. Obviously, Elon Musk is part of the conversation. Obviously, Mark Zuckerberg has been and will continue to be part of the conversation. And social media is part of the conversation. But I think there's two things to me that I really love pointing out about this is, one, the consolidation is what has caused this, right? We've allowed tech giants to grow too big. They've consolidated
100%.
all their competition. Google is notorious for buying some of the best ideas in the world and killing them. Just to avoid having them as competition. And that has homogenized our tech ecosystem into an area where there is no difference between them, right? And the difference is the kind of moderation they do now, right? That's a weird differentiation point. So you've got
That's
that.
a scary moderation, or a scary differentiation point.
And then you got, Facebook and stuff who are still trying to say, well, we do moderate because that's what we're required legally to do. So it's a really interesting thing that we'll be watching, Obviously, we're going to talk. We just should plan to talk about every podcast, I guess.
I mean, we might as well just have a Twitter of the week or X of the week conversation. To be clear, too, the thing that scares me about this whole thing, and you and I have had this conversation, too, the idea that monopolies aren't supposed to be a thing.
Yeah.
But they 100% are a thing.
100% are. Absolutely.
Like Johnson & Johnson is a great example of a monopoly that they just decided to name something different, so they weren't called a monopoly, basically.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, it's to me, I think technology is the worst example. Meaning, it's the best example of a bad behavior.
Yeah.
And that
it's easiest to pick off, right?
Yeah, it's been tough to watch. I remember when Google bought what is now AdSense.
Right.
And so I was having a conversation about this not too long ago, but that's the ad banners that you see on almost like every website, which is how they track you, how they have your data, because you're over here using, a sporting goods website, and you searched for a baseball bat, and that's why baseball bats start showing up on Instagram, right?
Everywhere.
Like that's how all that works, is because they've got a little piece of code on almost every website on the internet.
Yeah.
And it's pretty gross, that one company has that and your email. So they have that and your email and your documents, your office stuff. So they have that and your email and your search history, right? And they have that and your email and your search history. But we're not using it for anything malicious. Right, and all your video watching preferences, right? And they have it's you keep going, and it's like, okay, those were not originally all one company.
Yeah.
And that's really the wonky thing about it, right? Those were different companies that were bought. And if those had remained different companies, you would not have this single consolidation of power. And I definitely think the United States government, I talked about this. We need to stop voting in people who don't understand technology or technology is going to ruin
What's
us all.
the Instagram?
Yeah. Mr. Zuckerberg, why do Android phones track my behavior? Honorable representative, I don't know.
It's
I'm
legit. This is probably a
Right.
legit question that occurred.
Oh no,
I'd
that
imagine.
actually happened. He's like, I'm the
Yeah.
CEO of Facebook, not
Yeah.
Google, who
Android,
makes
yeah.
Android.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh
so you know,
my
it's
God.
we can definitely work our way through that. But yeah, so we'll talk about X.com. Hey, you know what? I promise you we won't talk about Twitter next time. It'll be
Thanks. I'm gonna need a jingle for that.
It'll be X. Elon's X.
I mean, at the end of the day, my thing is maybe I'm very naive, and that's probably why I push back at a lot of the. Seven has been very, oh my God, this guy is ridiculous.
Vocal, yeah.
You know, and I do push back a lot, not because I agree with what he's doing, because I 100% agree that some of the shit he's been doing, excuse my language, has been horrible for the employees and everybody involved. I'm not going to argue that for a minute, but I'm probably very naive in the idea that I'm thinking 20,000 foot view down the road somewhere.
He's up to something.
Right. Maybe, and it's going to be good. We're going to go to Mars. X is going to Mars. You know, like.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It really, you know, he's an enigma wrapped in a puzzle. That guy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. That is a fascinating one. I look forward to continuing to talk about his shenaniganizing because it is just fun. And yeah, it's fun for me to talk to you about it because we have different opinions. I think that's to me, that's the fun of it, you know. And I would recommend anyone who doesn't have Threads, and that includes you, Happo, right? You have to use Instagram to sign up. So that's Zuckerberg's play, on making that work. But I would recommend you getting accounts. So what I do is I park accounts. I think I would recommend you doing that. I have
Just a screen name.
Yeah, just go out there, grab it. It's yours. Reserve it. Put something on there that identifies it as, yep, it's absolutely you. And then I'm never going to use it. I don't use Twitter much, as you know. I never use Facebook for a lot of reasons. So I would recommend grabbing it, or because I have been impersonated before. It was Twitter, in fact. And so that led to a lot of really interesting confusion. And would recommend having a presence on there, because if you don't, you can't stop someone who's impersonating you.
Sure.
Because if you're not even on the platform, you have no claim to your name.
I definitely thought about it because, like, you know, when the whole "we need to leave Twitch" thing happened a few weeks ago, and everybody was like, "We're going to kick," and so I mean, I reserved my name over there and everything. But the thing that worries me
we're going
is
to Green Twitch. Green Twitch is for me.
Yeah. The thing that worries me is when you agree to their use of service over on Threads, they specifically say that if you delete your Threads account, you're going to lose your Instagram account. And for those out there listening, if you don't follow me on Instagram, I don't post a lot on Instagram, but there's a lot of history there, you know. And so the idea of me losing that because I'm like, screw Threads, you know, like, but that's probably a childish, idiotic worry of mine. Probably.
No, I mean, it's interesting. I think that the strategy that they chose, and I can only imagine it's because Threads is actually built on Instagram.
Right.
You know, it's probably just the text part of Instagram. And so I imagine there was a lot of conversations around, do we really want to tie this thing so tightly to Instagram? Because that is a risk in and of itself. Just like you said, there's a lot of reasons people won't use it for that.
Right.
But they did get, I think, 100 million people signed up in the first week, I think, something like that. So
that's legit.
No, they got a lot of traffic. And, you know, I know Zuckerberg is sitting somewhere being like, Ma, you should have let me fight him. Right?
Mother me
by
off.
By the way, I take Zuck in that fight every day. That guy works out with UFC
You think so?
fighters for fun. Oh, yeah,
He
works
looks like
out
a
with
very
UFC fighters
scrawny dude, man. He looks like it. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, but he works out with UFC fighters for fun. That's what he does. So, like,
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Elon does look like the guy that's like eating albino Nigerian babies for dinner. Like
he's that's two lizard people fighting. If you ask me, that's what
saying.
That is. Yeah.
That may open some. You know, that might be a good sci-fi movie right there.
Yeah. Neither one of those people know how to look human. Hello, human. I am here to fight. And I can just see Well,
So
if nothing else, we get 1,000 memes out of it.
I'm telling you. So Seven, you mentioned Chernobyl.
Yep. I did.
What do you think? What are your thoughts? That's what you're watching, or what you watched.
Yeah, that's what I'm watching. My thoughts on Chernobyl, man. You know, all right, I got a lot of thoughts on Chernobyl. That's one of the better. That's one of the better shows I've seen. One of the better series. It's not a show; it's a series.
Sure.
So they obviously made it with the beginning and the end. No spoilers. I won't tell you what happens in Chernobyl.
Right.
Right. But the things they chose to do with that series blew me away. They didn't back away from anything.
Nope.
And the only criticism I have is there's no Russians.
Yeah. Well, I
You know?
think there's like 2 or 3, but they don't have any front standing positions in the show.
Yeah.
Right? They're all British.
Yeah. There is one episode in this series that I found particularly difficult to watch, and it involves the clearing out of the town and what that was like.
Yep.
And that's what I'm referring to when I say they didn't back away from any of these subjects, and they did a really good job of telling the story and then retelling the events.
Yep.
And it put it all together in a way that I've watched a lot of documentaries about Chernobyl. I'm fascinated by Chernobyl, and I thought I knew a lot about it, but the show taught me a lot of things I never ever knew had gone on.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Yeah, so I
That's
very much
good.
enjoy. I think that was a great recommendation. So Happa, what you watching?
I've been all over the place. I'm honestly waiting for the next half of season 3 of Witcher to come out,
Oh,
because I
yeah?
finished the
Yeah?
first half.
What did you think of the first
Um,
half? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I've
I
heard
thought
mixed
it
reviews.
was good. I recently, though, saw somebody that was breaking down that show, and it actually opened my eyes a little bit, because we've all heard the news how Henry Cavill was saying he's not happy with the writers. The writers
Yep.
have said they could do better than the source material, and blah 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 blah, and that's why he left. I don't know if has he actually publicly said that's why he's leaving. I don't think he did publicly say.
I haven't
that,
seen
right?
him argue that. I have. That doesn't mean. I mean, I haven't kept up with
Sure.
it. But no, I haven't seen that.
But one of the things that this person mentioned was, if you watch The Witcher season 1 or all the episodes, and season 2 the episodes, you'll see progressively the show shifts away from being The Witcher and shifts to focusing on the female roles.
Yennefer.
More and more
Triss,
attention
Yennefer.
on Yennefer and
Ciri,
both
sure.
all of them.
Yep.
And more
Yep.
and more and more. And I will tell you, this first half of season 3 he's a supporting actor.
Yeah.
He's not even center. There's scenes where he's not even in the scene. And so I'm like, I didn't even think about that. And I don't know if that says something to the writers of the show or what, but now that I'm like, if it's called The Witcher, it should probably be centered around the freaking Witcher. Like, not to downplay these women that are holding these roles. I'm not trying to say that at all. But and that's one of the things. It's like, wow, you can really tell that they aren't focusing on the source material. They literally are writing their own show. And I'm probably more of a snob than I'll let on, but I have no inclination to watch the next season.
Yeah.
I'm not going to watch it with the Hemsworth guy. I'm not going to watch it.
Liam. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so my wife and I I'm a fan of the games. I've not read the books, but a fan of the games. I really believe Witcher 3 is one of the greatest games ever made.
Yeah, I agree.
And especially with the DLC, right? And so Witcher 3, being as good as it is, and the books I'm familiar with but have not read them. And what I will say is I have a different viewpoint, which is Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I am a fan of the books of Game of Thrones. Very much a fan. And when the writers decided to move away from the source material is when that show fell apart.
Yeah.
And I think maybe there's a lesson. And Witcher sounds like it's doing something similar. I've read reviews that are very similar to what you're saying. Is like I'm
Yeah.
not interested in going further. There's something to be said for creating a show like Witcher or let's say Game of Thrones, which the reason it becomes great is because you have a built-in fan base to start with.
Yeah.
So you have 150,000, 200 people who are willing to watch it, right? Out of the say 5-6 million people who are like die-hard fans,
Yeah.
you get 150,000, 250,000, 300, some number is willing to watch the first couple of episodes and say, got the 7 stamp of approval, right? And then they tell somebody else because they're so excited because now the books are coming to life. I remember when this happened with Game of Thrones. The first 2 seasons
Yeah,
were the first
yeah.
2 books.
Yes.
And it's like, oh my God, I'm getting to see the Red Keep, right? Like you're seeing things, these Tyrion Lannister, Jaime, like you're
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
the Arya Starks, you're seeing these characters come to life and you get very excited about it. And that builds the hype. And then people are more willing nowadays to buy into fantasy shows and to buy into that
Yeah.
stuff. And that, Lord of the Rings unlocked, I think, a lot of that. But it's more mainstream now. And so to watch these companies, these production companies waste that after a couple of seasons is hard. And I can't imagine being, if I was an actor on set who really cared about the source material, to be told, and especially the amount of training required, that Cavill did for Witcher, right? Like he did his own stunts.
And
like,
he's like an uber nerd, so he knows the source material. Like,
oh, he's been very open about he's doing that because he's a fan.
yeah.
I imagine it's difficult to be on set and be like, wait, you're telling me to do what? That's not at all. Like I know
It
everything
doesn't
about
match.
this material.
This doesn't match up.
And someone's but Bobby over here, that's writing, on his second show ever, and the first one was, Muppets in Manhattan or something, right? Which I'm not knocking the writers, but there
Right.
is source material, and your job should be in
Yeah.
those in my as a fan. I know it's fan
Yeah.
service,
Yeah.
but if you're going to call it The Witcher, make it about The Witcher.
Well,
Follow
and,
the
and
source
that's
material.
that's what pulls people in, right? It's like people that have, like you said, like they have, because everybody when they read a book, they paint a picture in the head, so they want to see the show to see how much of it they got right. And then, oh, okay, this makes sense now, or whatever. I got that right in my head, whatever. And that, I don't know, man. I think I'm willing to believe that season 4 of Witcher is it. If there's something I've learned about Netflix, is they're really great at producing a really good series for 1, maybe 2, maybe 3, and then they kill it, and then they're done. And then that's it.
Yep.
They move on, regardless of how amazing the show is. And that was for me, is like I watched that first half of The Witcher. When it ended, I started seeing a lot of the interviews and thought processes about how, with Liam and stuff. And I even saw an interview with the girl that plays Yennefer and the girl that plays Ciri. They were asking about what they thought about Liam being the new Witcher, and their response was, I dare say, it was a card given to them to say, this is what you say. Like, they said exactly the same thing. Their responses were almost identical. Their facial expressions were very, very blank. Like, to me, seemed forced. Like, they're not happy about it either. So to me, I think that's going to show in the show. And I mean, I'm just not going to watch it, but
Sure it
but
will.
either way,
Especially a show where the main actor's primary line is,
right? And
Right?
everybody was excited from the first picture they saw him dressed up as the Witcher. Everyone was excited because he looked
Oh, yeah.
like the game character, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
And
He was
now
Geralt.
he's been confirmed for doing a Warhammer 40K show for
Yeah.
Amazon. He is confirmed he's in talks to play Solid Snake.
Yeah,
Like-
I gotta be honest, man. Not a lot of celebrities. I'd be like, all right, that seems like kind of guy I can
telling
hang
you.
out with. But Henry Cavill, I think I can hang out with that guy.
I'm telling you, like,
I would be like that's a big dude, right? Like that's a
he's a
big, good looking
boy.
dude.
He's a big
Yeah.
Dorito-shaped dude with legs.
Yeah, yes. So yeah,
But yeah.
I'm gonna watch that. I am gonna pick it up. We've watched the first 2 seasons. We will watch the 3rd season. My wife's been asking me about it, so we will watch it. I'll have to let you know.
If you go into the 3rd season watching it as a fantasy show, not
Yeah.
thinking Witcher, you'll be fine. I mean, that's
Yeah.
where it boils down to. But I've been watching that, and then Strange New Worlds.
Ooh,
I have
Tell
no
me about that.
problem admitting that I'm a Star Trek nerd. I am 100% a Star Trek. I love Star Wars, but I'm a bigger Star Trek nerd because Star Trek went more into the technical side of
Okay.
things. Um, I've watched every series that has ever come out. I started watching Discovery and quickly stopped watching it because it is the worst Star Trek that's ever been produced ever. A lot of people say that it's not Star Trek; it's just some weird sci-fi spin-off. But Strange New Worlds is the USS Enterprise before Kirk. So
Gotcha.
it's Chris Pike as commander of the USS Enterprise in her initial maiden voyage and the adventures that they go through. And I tell you what, the reason I love this show is I hate when they do reboots of shows and they change everything, like graphics or like fidelity of technology and everything like that. I understand that there's a necessity to do that stuff, but like case in point, the episode 3, 4, and 5 of Star Wars compared to episode 1, 2, and 3
Sure.
of Star Wars, you had these ships that looked very boxy and square and utilitarian, and then you had all these cool, sleek, aerodynamic ships and cool technology in 1, 2, 3. Just
and
didn't
somewhere
match
between
up.
there, Jedi's forgot how to fight. Like they got all
Right.
goofy and I
Yeah,
can barely
and-
hold a lightsaber.
And
Like,
that's literally what happened with Discovery. Discovery was like this whole ship that had all kinds of crazy technology on it that just didn't match up with Kirk's Enterprise at all.
Gotcha.
Strange New Worlds kind of reels that back. They're wearing uniforms that are kind of in line with the original series, a little bit more modern, a little bit. The technology's right in line, the sound effects are all in line, the characters are all there, like, and it's not, there's not a lot of forced agendas either in the story. It's just good old-fashioned sci-fi.
yeah.
And I think people have been needing that. Like they been needing to get back to just sci-fi stories. No, I love you, you love me, but I love her and I love him. Like I don't need none of that crap. I just need some sci-fi in there, Like
I just want
but-
lizard people getting shot.
I'm just saying. But
Now,
no,
now you
it is
said
good. It is a good show.
you indicated you were so into science fiction. You liked things that kind of went a little more down the science route, right? Like, and
Sure.
have you seen the show The Expanse?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Hell yeah. I try to advocate that show to everyone that I can possibly.
Yeah.
From the science of how they have to break to how missiles and
Yeah.
guns work
Yeah.
to everything.
So there's like, people don't understand it always, but I'll kind of talk through this. So if you're talking about fantasy, right? There's high fantasy, low fantasy, and the difference being low fantasy, if you're writing a low fantasy book, you have to explain magic and why it came to the world, right? And you can still be a fantasy story, but you have to explain that. High fantasy, it's just like, no, there's trolls and fire and dragons and magic and all kinds of stuff. Good luck, right? We're off to the races. And
Right.
science fiction has a bit of a similar approach sometimes where it's like, no, it's just science fiction, except that it's amazing. And then you have, stories like Dune, which is one of my favorites, right? And you go back and everything has to be explained in Dune.
Yep.
And then the same thing with Expanse. They're like, well, how did we travel the universe? Well, this guy
Yep.
invented a drive. And
Yep.
and the video, I was telling someone about the moment when they're showing that in the show, and the guy's like blasting off into space, and he's trying to send messages back because he invented a drive that would take him anywhere in the galaxy. But the problem was
Yeah.
he was now going somewhere in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Right. And he's like, I invented it, and now I'm just gonna go this way. Right. And he's
Yep.
probably, according to the story, probably still going right
Yep.
in some direction, or he hit something. So I really do appreciate shows that take that. And The Expanse was really good about one of the things I loved with that show is how they have to accelerate, decelerate by turning the ship around using the engines, but also how weapons would affect
Yeah.
the ships themselves. And you don't get to see, there hasn't been a lot of video, right? Like contest books and there's stuff like that, but there's
Sure.
not a lot of movies or good, high well-produced shows that kind of go through that. And a bullet
Yeah.
going through one of those ships, because there's no
projectile
reason not to use
specifically,
bullets,
yeah.
right? Everyone assumes, oh,
Yeah.
we'll just use energy
Yep.
weapons. We'll just use lasers. And like, no, why would you? There's still going to be
Yeah.
ballistics. There's still going to be, right, projectiles. There's still going to be all these things. And watching that is one of the cooler, I would recommend anybody watch Expanse. And if you watch it for nothing else, watch it for the physics that they have to abide by physics in that show. And I think that's fascinating.
One of the things that really struck me was, and you don't see this a lot in any sci-fi, is when they're shooting their autocannons, the defensive weapons. They're shooting their defensive weapons to kill missiles coming at them. If you watch the video closely, on, let's say, the port side of a ship, they're firing the autocannon. On the starboard side, there's a thruster firing automatically. And that's just a little detail that nobody probably thought about was, well, that's propulsion now. That autocannon is propulsion now. You have to compensate for that. And that, to me, blew me away that they did that in The Expanse. Like, yeah, everything in that show, and I guess there's a movie that's coming out. Yeah, that's definitely one of them that I will rewatch too. Like,
that's a rewatch for me as well. Yeah,
and I also love that show is our solar system. Like, it's not.
Yeah, it is very cool
You're not
that
going
it's not
to
a
other
pretend.
solar systems, right?
Right, you're belters, and you've got the the gravity differences and how that impacts people who are born in space. It's a really interesting. If you're into science fiction, sounds like Hapa. You're like Strange New Worlds is like one people should be checking out. We're saying, hey, if you're into fantasy, check out at least the first 2 seasons of Witcher, and the third one we'll talk about, and maybe the fourth one. But then also The Expanse gets a double stamp of approval from us. Like if you're into science fiction, check out The Expanse.
That's a show that I was really upset that they ended, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah, it's a good show. Okay, so I'm gonna add a thing here that we haven't done before. So what you watching? So I'm gonna ask, I was gonna say, what are we hearing? What are we listening to? So I'll give you a second because I don't know if you were ready for me to ask you that, but I wanted to talk about maybe the albums or songs we're listening to. And so I'll go first. There was a Greta Van Fleet album that came out this week. There were several albums that came out this week I was interested in, but Greta Van Fleet in particular, I've listened through it. And if you haven't checked that out, it's good. And so the first time I ever heard Greta Van Fleet, someone sent me a demo. And it was this band. It was a friend of mine. He was like, hey, you got to check these guys out. He didn't really give me any explanation of what it was. And so I get this thing and I'm listening to it and I turn on and it was Greta Van Fleet. And I honestly thought these were lost Zeppelin tapes. Is what I thought.
Oh, wow.
This is the lost Led Zeppelin. If you haven't heard the original Greta Van Fleet stuff, they were very, very close to what a Zeppelin sound would be. And I'm not hating on them. A lot of people did initially hate on them because they're like too close to Zeppelin. They're affected. They're just trying to pretend to be Zeppelin. Now, out to the folks from Zeppelin, like the guys in that band, to their credit, they said, I am not worried about it. They sound great. And who wouldn't take more Zeppelin if we could get it anyway? So, so I'm not hating on them. But what I will say is this album from Greta Van Fleet, the one that came out Friday, is the first time I can say from top to bottom that I've heard that band that I think that whole band knows who they are now. This is a new sound.
Oh, wow.
Like it's not a huge deviation, but it's no longer them being like Zeppelin. It's Greta Van Fleet. And so I will say this to me is the first album from them that I would wholeheartedly say you got to go check that album out. It is top to bottom fantastic. Yep. Yeah, Lucas Nelson released some stuff too, so that's a good one. But definitely Greta Van Fleet.
They look like a very retro rock band.
If you've never sat and listened to them, you're gonna have to check them out.
Yeah, I'll have to. I need to.
Yeah. I'll send you after the podcast. I'll send you a couple of songs to check out.
My music tastes are all across the spectrum, from folk music to country music to bluegrass to rock to, and recently
definitely opera, big opera guy.
I'm huge, specifically Italian opera. Anyway, I listened to this group a bit last year, and I go through waves of listening to country to folk music to whatever, but recently I picked this group back up called the Dead South.
Oh yeah. Okay.
It's kind of funny. The Dead South is a Canadian band, but I would have never guessed that they were Canadian. I would have 100% thought for every moment that they came from your neck of the woods or out in Alabama or mixture folk country-ish music. Great music, great stories behind their songs, great sound. The lead vocalist has kind of a little bit higher pitched twang to him that I just kind of gravitate to. and I honestly thought they were from, like I said, from Alabama, Mississippi, or Texas, because they have a Texas folk sound to them too. If you've never heard Texas folk music, it sounds very
absolutely,
along
I
the
have.
lines.
Yep.
And I joke that I'm a born again Texan, but it really isn't a joke. Like the more I go every day, I think I've literally become a Texan because I love live music, Texas live music, and I love a lot of the culture here. But yeah, and I've been just listening the hell out of the Dead South.
Awesome.
Lately.
I'll have to check them out. I haven't heard them.
It's good.
I will
It's
definitely
feel
check
good, upbeat music. It just really
Yeah.
is. Like So. But
I will
yeah.
check that out. And then our final bit. What are we playing?
I mean,
And
what I'm
this is
playing,
really
you're
a question.
playing,
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. This is really a question for both of us because we generally play games together. We've got a couple friends we play with a lot, and so lately we've been playing, Battle Bits Remastered. We talked about this last podcast, and I got to be honest, I haven't gotten tired of the game. I think there's some tweaks to be made, but that's a great game, and it may have some lasting power. Like
Three
that's
devs, man. 3 devs.
that's unbelievable. We did pick up something new though that I want to make sure we mention, which is very surprising to me. PGA Tour 2K23.
Yeah, no.
So,
why is it
I picked-
surprising to you?
Well, so I picked this game up, right? I had it on my Xbox, and I really got tired of playing with the controller, and so I picked it up on PC because I wanted to play it. I'm getting back into golf. I love golf. I love watching golf, playing golf.
Sure.
I was like, this is a great way to relax. And all of a sudden, our friend, Deacon, he was like, hey, I'll play golf. So he starts playing, and you hit me up, hey, I'll play golf. And so we end up with this.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
we have a lot of fun just playing golf,
Yeah.
talking, a lot like
Yeah.
this, in fact, just talking and laughing, right? It's just
Yeah.
hilarious. I mean, you can't putt, right? Like,
I
simply can't
cannot
chip.
putt, Seven.
Like, you can't
I
putt.
can't putt to save my life.
It is to the point of being a meme, right? Like I can't get out of bunkers, right? So we have a lot of fun, and in many ways, it's been interesting to me because it probably mimics the way the three of us would act on a golf course, which would probably get us kicked off the course for life. But
I think we would definitely get kicked off.
yeah, but it has been fun. I think we're gonna start doing some. We talked about doing some streams, maybe on some Sundays or something. So
For sure.
stay tuned for anyone. So that's really our last bit. I want to make sure I covered. I didn't cover at the beginning. A little bit of housekeeping to make sure to tell everybody. This podcast is available wherever you get podcasts. But also, if you would like to watch us do this live, we do this live on YouTube. You can check us out at Real Talk with Happen 7. So you can come check that out on YouTube. We do follow along in chat as people are talking in chat. I'm not gonna. We don't generally address it vocally, because the podcast wouldn't make any sense. But I will say we do chat back, and so we love to see people, hanging out, watching, hopefully enjoying what we're talking about, hearing our dumbasses talk about stuff. So yeah, I hope that you had a good time tonight having a
I
conversation.
always do.
Definitely.
I don't
Yeah.
think I've had a single bad time when we're just chatting, man. That's one of the reasons why I think you and I wanted to do this. This was, to be clear, this was an idea that we had thought up. I think we're going on 2 years ago now.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
We had the idea. It wasn't just me and Seven, to be clear, that had the idea, but I think Seven and I were the only ones that maybe had a clarity in our schedule enough to
Yep.
do it, and B, really had the drive to routinely be available. And it's to no fault to our friends, by the way. I don't
No,
want that
no.
to sound like that's a bad thing. People have real lives. I know it's crazy to think about people having actual lives in the world. But yeah, this for me, this is a project of love, man. Like, and that was one of the things we talked about, right? Was I never wanted the podcast to get to a point where it was work, and that's why we've had some dead time in between various episodes or whatever, because Seven has like a real life job that he actually does. I know it's crazy to think about. I'm the slacker that just kind of floats.
Yeah, believe it
by
or
every
not, no
day.
one's really paying me what I need to make doing just this. But we talked about it last time. You get us
telling you.
making I would call it a rough, million a year or so each, and I'll do this full time.
Shoot, you get me to $100,000 a year, I'll be happy.
It's happy. I don't want it to go past without saying. Here we are, at the end of this recording this podcast. This is we were on schedule. This is the first time we've ever done it on schedule. It's
crazy.
And so, Yeah, our schedule is supposed to be every other Tuesday. So if you want to hang out, we will do it live every other Tuesday. And then usually, if I can get my act together, we'll have the audio only version of the podcast posted tomorrow. At the latest, it'll be Thursday, and then we'll probably have it sounds like we're gonna have the video podcast posted as well. So that'll be on Spotify and wherever you get your stuff.
So we're working it. I one of the things I really have genuinely loved is if you look at our pilot and you go through the episodes, we have progressively gotten better, whether that's video quality, audio quality, whatever the case would be, because Seven and I,
Let's put in the work, man. It's like you were saying earlier.
Yeah, what are you? You're like a good 1,000 miles from me, right? Something like that.
Yeah, how far apart are we actually? Yeah.
I don't know. I don't honestly know off the top of my head. But, I mean, the fact that we're doing this podcast from that kind of distance with that differing schedules, I think is pretty amazing. And we've been progressively getting better. Audio's been getting better. That's one thing I definitely have to credit Seven for. Specifically, this mic right here has been a game changer for me. Huge game changer.
One day we should talk about that mic.
I'm telling you. Honestly, this has been, of all the gear in this room, for the stream specifically, not all the bullshit behind me, again, excuse the language, but all the hardware I had for streaming, I probably have a good $6,000-$7,000 worth of hardware here in front of me. This microphone, which is a fraction of that cost, was probably the most valuable piece, to me at least.
Yeah.
So
yeah, having a microphone you don't have to stress over, man, it changes everything.
For sure. But yeah, so for those of you out there listening, if you do a search for HAPA_ fodder, FODDER, if you Google it, you'll pretty much come across me anywhere. I've been pretty lucky. I'm not important enough for anybody to impersonate me. That's not a freaking suggestion to anybody out there.
Gauntlet thrown.
Right.
Buckle
you'll
up,
run
buddy.
across me. My Instagram is mostly for my food posts and IRL posts. My Twitter is mostly for random stuff, and my Facebook's mostly for gaming. And then, of course, here we are with Real Talk with Happa and Seven. You can Google that as well, and you'll probably... I actually Googled us the other day on a incognito browser, and we came up on literally every platform you could download a podcast on, so that was
That's
a win for
fancy.
me. Yeah. I loved
Fancy.
it.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
Where can they find you?
So, much like you can search for S3VYN pretty much anywhere. It's a moniker I've had since roughly 1999, a little bit before that. So it's been around. Chances are you will find me. So that could be Twitter. That's going to be probably the best place to get me. But also, like I was talking about earlier, I do camp accounts. Check them occasionally. So if you're on Threads or Instagram or Facebook or any of those, you can find me there. You can also find me over on Twitch. That's probably the easiest way to find me. And then at VII.TV, right, if anyone wants to check that out. So that's, I'm like you, pretty easy to find, quite honestly, if anyone wants to look us up.
And for those of you listening out there, if you message us on any of those social media outlets or even make a comment here on the YouTube channel, if you have a topic you want us to kind of discuss or you're curious our thoughts on, please feel free to do that. I would love to do topics based off of our listeners or answer questions based off of our listeners. That could be a whole new segment as well. But I appreciate the hell out of everybody that's listening or that's downloaded us or that's watching us. Y'all make the world go round for us for the podcast. So comment, subscribe, like, and all that stuffs for the algorithm, as they say. And I think that's it for us. For, was it episode 6? Episode 7?
Episode
We're on
6
now? Look at
6 plus a pilot,
the Rooster. Right? We didn't do what I said we were gonna do.
Yeah.
This episode we tried to figure out. I think we're gonna have an issue sometime in the future, but the name of our podcast, if you haven't noticed, is a whiskey cocktail. And I'm not gonna lie, I try to tie the name into the subject somehow, and that's a lot of mental gymnastics.
It's becoming work. It's becoming work. That's for sure.
And because we talked about vat-grown chicken, this episode's called The Rooster, which was a drink specifically made for True Grit in name of Rooster Cogburn. Not Cogburn. What was his full name? Was it Rooster Cogburn? That was his name, wasn't it?
I think so.
But it is meant to be a little bit of kosher salt for the rim, a lime wedge, 1.5 ounces of whiskey, half an ounce of cinnamon schnapps, which I didn't even know cinnamon schnapps was a thing.
Yeah.
And then 4 ounces of sarsaparilla. And what this drink is meant to do is kind of bring out the Old West. And I think if you mix some sarsaparilla with whiskey, you're hitting that metric. So I think
I'm gonna try
I
it.
have to actually make it. I want to give it a shot. So, but
I have
but
to
yeah,
try. You have to let me know what you think.
I'm excited, man. Seven and I we've been spitballing all kinds of ideas actually to add on to the podcast as well. So
Yep.
hopefully there's some good things to come in the future. So, but appreciate the hell out of every single one of y'all, and we hope that you continue to listen and continue to watch or follow our other platforms. You have anything finally to say there, buddy?
I don't, but I hope everybody has a good night and appreciate you and appreciate everyone hanging out and downloading us later. And we'll see you next time.
Cheers to all of you.